welcome to folks. This is the May quarterly update of the Spotted Lanternfly in Massachusetts webinar series from the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. I am Jen Foreman-Orth. I'm going to be running things. What today's webinar will cover is, first of all, a discussion about spotted lanternfly detector dogs from Arden Blumenthal at the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, followed by an update from our SLF survey team lead, Astra Perkins, about Massachusetts SLF survey and treatment. And then a quick review from Elizabeth Barnes, our forest pest outreach specialist, about what to look for right now if you're checking for spotted lanternfly, followed by a brief Q&A. Arden Blumenthal comes to us from the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, a volunteer-powered organization that builds, maintains, and protects public trails in New York and New Jersey. She studied wildlife biology as an undergrad and did graduate work at Purdue University, where she received a master's degree in ecology and evolutionary biology. Her combined interests in animal behavior and conservation biology led her to join the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference as a volunteer back in 2019. She is now their Conservation Dogs Program Coordinator and is here to speak to us today about the work her organization has been doing to train dogs to detect the invasive spotted lanternfly. And at this point, I am going to ask Arden to share her screen and start her presentation.
Thank you. All right. Thanks so much for having me. I am going to speak to you a little bit about how we at the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference have been using conservation detection dogs for early detection of invasive species in the lower Hudson. All right, so for those of you who don't know, the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference is we're a small nonprofit, and we're over 100 years old now, which is pretty cool. We are originally established to help build and maintain trails outside of New York City, but since then we've expanded into helping to preserve the land around those trails, advocating for access to them and other open spaces, and then of course stewarding the natural areas that surround the trails. And that stewardship has a lot to do with managing invasive species. So the Trail Conference is actually the host organization for the Lower Hudson Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. I know that is a mouthful. We are one of 8 PRISMs in New York. And like I said, ours is the Lower Hudson. So this map here depicts approximately where our PRISM is located. We've been the host of the Lower Hudson PRISM since 2013, and we have over 50, I think it might even be over 60 partners at this point. And our partners include other nonprofits, businesses, cooperative extensions, academic institutions, and even individuals who are all dedicated to the prevention of the spread and introduction of invasive species. So as everyone here probably knows, invasive species are best managed when they can be when they're prevented from even establishing. So we in the Lower Hudson PRISM prioritize early detection species. We call these tier 2 species. And the problem that many of us have with detecting these populations when they're so small is that they're really hard to find, right? They're either sparse or the individuals themselves are small or cryptic. And so, yeah, that presented a problem. And our potential solution for this problem was bringing in conservation dogs. So for those of you that don't know anything about conservation detection dogs, the methodology has actually been around since the 1890s, when biologists in New Zealand needed help finding ground nesting native birds that were at risk of predation from invasive mammal species. So dogs helped find the biologists find these native birds and their nests and relocate them. Since then, the methodology has really taken off, especially after the advancements in some biological techniques that allowed researchers to extract very important data from scat. So dogs are also involved in, we'll just say, these broad categories, which are ecological monitoring. That's to do with, finding scat, like I mentioned, or also just the native species themselves. Wildlife crime prevention, so dogs that are detecting snares, firearms, or even contraband from wildlife trafficking, stuff like that. And invasive species and or biosecurity detection. So what we do with spotted lanternfly and other invasive species in the lower Hudson would fit into this category. But I'd also put some like disease detection into this category, even potentially the dogs that are working for Department of Agriculture is in this category. So the question is why dogs? Why could they potentially be a solution for our problems finding early detection species? And a lot of people, call detection dogs tools, and we don't really like that language. But as far as the methodology goes, they a human and a dog working together can be very specific yet flexible. So the dogs are able to find a very specific thing, like a even down to an individual, but yet they're able to learn new things. So you can add to their repertoires fairly easily. They're agile and easy to transport, and so we can go to remote places and traverse a lot of terrain that is not that easy for humans to do. We can see results in real time, right? So researchers don't always have to send every sample collected out to a lab if a detection dog is confirming finds in the field. And last but definitely not least, they can be more efficient and accurate than human searchers alone. So there's plenty of research that backs this up in certain context here. And the last one is especially what we are interested in exploring when we're talking about trying to eradicate certain invasive species from the lower Hudson. So for us, we were really interested in being able to cover larger areas more efficiently when we're searching for the boundaries of infestations of certain invasive species. And we know that we're likely to not find anything, find much at all, if anything. We really valued being able to move quickly through the landscape. We wanted to be able to find leftover individuals after removal. So we have a wonderful AmeriCorps crew seasonally that works in our region. And we have like I mentioned, a robust volunteer force. And so when they remove or do management for invasive species, we wanted to be able to find what they missed. We really love that the dogs are unbiased searchers. So we, as humans, have a pretty, set idea about where we believe we're most likely to find individuals in a population. And so when the dogs come in, they're strictly just following their noses. And so sometimes they're able to lead us to new or different areas that we, as humans, we're not likely to check. And then, of course, prevention cannot be overstated. We really loved that dogs are such great ambassadors, and we were hoping to capture people's attention, bring in new audiences to be aware of invasive species that wouldn't have otherwise because of the dogs. So we first got started in 2019 with the species Scotch Broom. So our work as the idea launched was funded by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. We were funded for 3 years part-time through this grant, and we decided to start with Scotch Broom as I guess you could call it a pilot, although we were pretty confident that this idea could work. Because it's classified as an emerging invasive in our region. We had very distinct sites that were easily accessed, and they were convenient essentially. And the species itself is identifiable. It's evergreen, and so our handler Josh Beasy, who was one of the founders of the program, felt confident that he could identify when our dog Dia had detected the species. And you can see that Scotch Broom gets up to 6 feet tall over here, but also the seedlings are so incredibly difficult to find. And this is a photo of one that our dog Dia found. And here's some fun notable finds. See if you can spot the Scotch Broom in these photos. I bet you can't, because you're probably just seeing Scotch Broom for the first time right now, but and there they are. They were both identified by our dog Dia, and it's just so difficult to see these when the veg gets as high as these photos. So we called this first project just definite success. We removed, over 2,000 plants that we wouldn't have otherwise, and we got a lot of press, which was nice. And in that first year, we learned a total of 3 species. So after Scotch Broom, we taught our dog Dia how to detect 2 more. And right now, here's the list of species that our program detects. And the rest of the talk, I'm going to focus more on spotted lanternfly, but I wanted to give some background about the rest of the work that we're doing in our region, because it isn't just lanternfly that we're working on, and we are concerned about the overall ecosystem health in the lower Hudson, and how we interact with our partners, and the other governmental organizations plays a role in what we're actually doing with lanternfly. So here are the invasive species that we currently are detecting, and then I will go into what species that we've retired from our list as well. So we started our work with spotted lanternfly in 2019, and this was part of the same, this work was also funded by that same grant by Department of Environmental Conservation. It's the second species that we taught to Dia, and also we brought on a new dog, Fagin, who's pictured here. We actually trained in Chester County, Pennsylvania. So I'm actually from Pennsylvania, and grew up in Chester County. So I was just a volunteer at the time, but I set up a bunch of training sites for our handler Josh, and they stayed for a couple days in Pennsylvania to train, essentially so we would have easy access to training samples and be able to train in situ. So we originally started with adults, which I will go into. And I believe we were the first working team in, oops, that's supposed to say country. So as far as I'm aware, back in 2019, we might have been the first to be training dogs to actually deploy for spotted lanternfly. There is another working detection team in Pennsylvania, but I believe we were the first to deploy, so that's pretty cool. And in 2019, New York still had the incident command structure, and we, as the trail conference, we're just part of this basically a cog in the wheel, right? So we didn't exactly know how our role in spotted lanternfly detection was going to evolve, but we knew that we wanted to do public demonstrations for some education and outreach purposes. I don't know why that happened. And we were anticipating being involved in vehicle inspections because at that time there were no reports of established populations of spotted lanternfly in New York, and of established populations, that is. And we were mainly responding to like one-off, just like single bug sightings, essentially. And here is Dia. This is actually in New Jersey, learning how to search rail tracks. And here is Fagan at an inspection. I will mention that although back here, we were teaching the dogs how to find the adult lanternfly. They, what we call spontaneously generalized to the other life stages. So here Dia is actually looking for egg masses, and that happened fairly seamlessly. So that winter, so 2019 to 2020, the incident command structure was dismantled, and then we had to communicate with several organizations. We started collaborations with Department of Agriculture and Markets, kept in communication with Department of Environmental Conservation. We're doing the vehicle inspections with Department of Transportation. Also speaking with New Jersey, and of course we were making collaborative efforts with Cornell University. During this time, like I mentioned, we're just mainly a rapid response team and going to confirm single bug sightings. I am going to, can I pause for a question, or a poll question?
Of course you can.
Great.
Let's see if I can deploy it correctly. Hold on one second. All right. All right, everybody, it's time for the first poll question. And the question is, what agency funded this program's initial spotted lanternfly detection efforts? And your choices are NYS Department of Environmental Conservation, NYS Department of Agriculture and Markets, the USDA, or NYS State Parks. And we've got about half of the people participating, so I'm gonna just keep talking and leave it open for another 10 seconds or so. Just a reminder, if you're looking for license credits, you do need to answer these poll questions. If you are having trouble with the polling system, I'm going to drop my email into the chat when the poll is done, and you can email me with the question content and your answer. Although I'd much prefer that you just answer the poll. And we've got about 90% participation, but it looks like no more responses are coming in, so I'm going to end the poll.
Cool.
And let me share the results with you, Arden, and you tell me if people were right or not. This is a tricky question, apparently.
People were mainly correct. Yeah, Department of Environmental Conservation funded our initial SLF efforts. So learning spotted lanternfly was the second species we learned in our 3-year grant from DEC. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the poll and let you get back to your presentation. Great. Okay, so at this point, we are both a brand new program, kind of testing the we're really creating something new, right? There is no other conservation detection dog organization that or program that is built into a larger environmental organization, and essentially folding ourselves in to existing efforts and to both the nonprofit and the government. So we really felt that it was necessary to establish our methodology and help bolster it by creating a partnership with an academic institution. And so we started speaking with Cornell University about doing some research about spotted lanternfly detection with conservation dogs, because at this point, spotted lanternfly is moving into New York, and we really wanted researchers and managers to have as many tools in their tool belt as possible. And so in the winter of 2020 through 2021, we were working with Cornell as well as DEC and collaborating with Working Dogs for Conservation, and funded by the Atkinson Venture Fund to essentially compare the performance of dogs and humans at detecting spotted lanternfly egg masses in both vineyards and the surrounding natural areas. So we wanted to understand if the conservation detection dog method could be useful for in other contexts besides what we had been doing so far, which was some inspections and a lot of natural area searches. Since spotted lanternfly are such a threat to in the agricultural setting. And what we found, this hasn't been published yet, but it's almost there, so sit tight. But essentially, in summary, humans were more likely to find egg masses in vineyards, which did not surprise Josh or I, the dog handlers, essentially because the vines themselves, there are only so many places that spotted lanternfly can lay their egg masses, right? So humans are pattern oriented visually, and so once we know where to check, we are pretty decent at that. Oh.
Okay, we appear to be having some technical difficulties, and we have lost our speaker. So we are going to just hold on for a second and see if she recovers and can come back.
All right, so yes, humans are more likely to find egg masses on the vines in the vineyards, but the dogs were 3 times more likely to find egg masses in the surrounding natural areas, which once again doesn't surprise us dog handlers. There are so many things to look at in forest, right? Where do you even check? Where do you begin? And so the dogs really excelled in that context. So the takeaways from this study were that if you're a human searcher or you're with a dog team, you really should focus searching the edges of forests and the poles in vineyards more closely. The dogs should be the conservation dog methodology should be used in forests only if we're thinking about an established infestation somewhere. But dogs could be used in vineyards for early detection purposes. So only when population densities are really low. If you're not expecting to find anything, all of the vineyards that we visited, unfortunately, because of the statistical modeling that we were doing, they had to have a non-zero infestation. And we were using self-reported population estimates by the farmers, and so we ended up visiting a lot more vineyards than that weren't really appropriate for the methodology. So in the last winter, the trail conference actually took a primary role in the spotted lanternfly response, and for us, the dog team, that meant that we were pretty much out all from November through May. We were searching boundaries of the known infestations, and we are also searching high risk areas, so places we knew had large tree of heaven stands, parking lots around, heavily trafficked destinations, like natural area destinations, and even, like a Lowe's parking lot, that sort of thing. The whole organization was also involved with surveying, but more in the summer, searching for adults and nymphs. And we were involved with treatments and obviously mobilizing volunteers. So that's what's really been cool about working within the trail conference, is that we're able to actually, after we do the detecting, we're able to follow up with management. And this past winter, we actually received funding by the USDA through the PPA, so the Plant Protection Act grant. And the dogs were essentially doing the same thing that we were doing last year, except we're on, a tighter schedule. We have set days that we went out, and we've also been better integrated into essentially the back end. So we use the same data entry process that Department of Ag and Markets does, and we're in communication with both USDA and Ag and Markets, and we're folded into their biweekly or their weekly calls, the statewide calls that happen. And because of this, we're able to go to the places that we really need to go and not be responding to, searching the well-established populations. We're going to those sites that, people have reported single bugs, or there was a single bug found in a trap earlier in winter or in summer, and we believe that there might be egg masses there, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. That's really where the dogs are excelling. So that was a lot about what we're doing, but you might be wondering, are conservation detection dogs the right fit for this elsewhere? Or are we just a special case, or that kind of question? So the question of whether the conservation dog methodology is the right fit is a super important one, because we're not just out there, playing with dogs. Yes, we do. They use play as their reward, so you can catch us playing with dogs, but it is still work, right? And the dogs should only be deployed where we think they're actually going to help. We don't want this to be a gimmicky thing, or something that serious researchers or land managers end up scoffing at because they think it's a joke. The dogs can really be an asset. We have definitely been able to increase our search area. For example, we searched for emerging invasive species sticky sage, and it's an 80-acre infestation. And we've been able to survey the same amount, cover the same amount of land as the seasonal AmeriCorps crew in just only a couple of days, where they're out there for several weeks. And so, that's utilizing the dogs in that way is very smart. We've been able to improve our survey accuracy. So we have been able to confirm 6 kudzu sites have been eradicated. There's been nothing found for several years at these sites, and just being able to have the dogs go and double check brings some peace of mind, and it enables us to move resources elsewhere. We do believe that they're better at being unbiased surveyors. We have found new infestation with the help of the dogs, and we've actually retired some projects because of that. And of course, they are great ambassadors. I mean, how can you not pay attention to what I'm talking about when you see this beautiful face right here? This is lovely Dia. We do have a list of species that we're no longer working with because the methodology, it either wasn't the right fit for these specific projects, or we're not ready to deploy yet, I guess you could say. And And so sometimes the methodology isn't the right fit, and we've learned a lot of lessons about, you know, when to say no to a project. So, or a site. So we really need to be working at low density sites. For spotted lanternfly, this can be a little tricky because sometimes you don't know until you're in a site, but really high density sites, you know, if dogs are going to be working at them, the egg masses need to be scraped at least 2 weeks ahead of time, because even the residual of the egg masses can be pretty stinky for these guys and distracting when they're trying to find an intact egg mass. Also, when we're thinking about plants, you know, seed banks can be robust seed banks can be tricky. Sometimes you can remove everything you have seen, and then if you wait too long, everything will have grown back. And in that case, you know, do you really need a dog in those situations? Working with spotted lanternfly has required a lot of great communication because there are so many players. And with these, you know, early detection rapid response projects, sometimes we're just trying to figure it out, right? And so understanding where the detection dog team fits in is super important. And I will place an emphasis on, especially if there's pesticide applications happening. I mean, humans have PPE. We don't expect, you know, we shouldn't be bringing dogs into situations where it could potentially be hazardous for them. Some investment might be required to get the methodology working for a specific project. And an example of that is one that I said that we've retired, which is oak wilt. It's a fungal disease of oak trees. And there's just too little known about it right now for the dogs to be able to be actively working on it in New York. And we would love to be involved in more research with this project. We really think that the dogs could be really helpful. But at this point, we would need some investment for training and research. And one thing we've had to really grapple with is that the status of the species will change over time. For SLF especially, we started out in 2019 and we were, you know, we were only being called out, you know, a handful of times. And, you know, this past year, we were out there 9 days a month for, you know, November through this month. And we obviously could have done more. So the species has been spreading through New York, and we have to really think about for how long will the conservation detection dog methodology be helpful for us. So what's next? Spotted lanternfly specifically for our program, as I just mentioned, so SLF is spreading north, and our current, you know, handler for this project, Josh Beasy, he actually lives in New Jersey, so it is quite a trek for him. You know, commuting sometimes 2 hours to sites that he's needed at. But we do anticipate applying for the USDA PPA grant again. We'll just be having a smaller scope of work and really focusing on those early detection sites. And he will be traveling even further, but just for, you know, fewer days in the month. So we do plan on sticking around for spotted lanternfly work, but probably not much in the lower Hudson. I haven't mentioned this, but we've also been doing a lot of native species detection work. So in the next couple of years, we're trying to place an emphasis on the impact of our invasive species management that the rest of our organization does by you know, improving the specificity essentially of what habitats we're working in. And fortunately, both Josh and I have working teams. So I have my dog Pete, and so we can both work on the same project and double up where, how much we're searching, or even search for different, work on different projects. So we can have a greater impact. And of course, using our past experiences to inform which projects we're saying yes to. So these are the native species that we plan on working with this year. And I'm more than happy to talk about those, but that's not what this is focused on today. So, yeah, we're also focused on setting up our program for long-term success. And that's what's been nice about working, having the USDA PPA grant, is that, it's an easy process to apply it again, because, we received the initial grant funding, and we've been able to establish, really lovely partnerships with Department of Ag and Markets and USDA, that will set us up for future projects, whether it be with spotted lanternfly or not. And hopefully in the future, we're looking to incorporate more projects where we're searching for multiple target species at the same time, which will, increase our kind of our longevity of what we can do in the region. And we really want to just increase the scale, and include more multi-year monitoring of these, handful groups of species. And that definitely involves both native and invasive species. So yeah, these are some of our, I guess you could call them sponsors, funders. I think I left some time for questions, so that's good. I didn't mean to rush through at the end, but I know that there's a lot more to talk about than, it can be, I can't anticipate everyone's questions, so I hope I covered as much as possible, but I'm definitely, open to answering people's questions either here or my contact info, I think, will be available. And I'd love to talk more about the methodology for spotted lanternfly. I think it has a lot of promise, but also should be used with care. And
Thank you so much, Arden. For
yeah.
folks that have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We're going to cover all the questions after our other speakers have gone. So at this point, Astra is, if you could share your screen, and
indeed,
whenever you're ready. And I should mention, of course, as usual, we're running a little behind. I'm going to blame technology this time. Lots of cool information though, but whenever you're ready.
I am hopefully ready. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Great. So I'm just going to really quickly go through our survey for what we've been doing basically since February when we had this last webinar. So I just wanted to give a recap on where we have SLF in the state that we know of. All these orange sites are the cities that we have established infestations in. So those are Springfield, Worcester, Shrewsbury, and Fitchburg. And all these blue areas are where we've had single incidences of either, a dead SLF that might have come in on some plant material, or maybe a hitchhiker from one of these other infestations. But that's what Massachusetts looks like so far. And I think, Jen, you have a poll question.
I'm just going to wait until you're done.
Okay, sure. So to recap on the winter survey, the adults passed in late November, early December. It takes an extended hard freeze to really kill them off. They do get kind of groggy as it gets colder, and they tend to sort of cluster together more frequently, and you'll see them sort of at the bases of the trees that they're on in groups. And I think they're trying to kind of huddle for warmth. But this is what they look like after they die. They can stick to the trees. They kind of have a coat, their eyes kind of glaze over. They look a little bit like zombies. So we've been out there all winter looking for egg masses. So these are a couple examples of what you'll see out in the field. This is kind of in a little burl of a tree, and then this is actually on some construction equipment on the rusty metal. But what we do is we return to the parcels that we had previously seen adults at, and we kind of do a grid survey out from those spots where we've seen them, and we search all the materials around the area for egg masses. And then we scrape the egg masses. So we either use our extender poles, or we have little paint scrapers at the top of these guys, or we have cards that we hand out to the public that are just like little credit cards. And what you want to do is pop the eggs. You kind of put whatever material you're using to scrape and kind of press until you can kind of feel them pop, and then scrape away the leftover egg mass. And so we've been doing that consistently in all the infestations for basically since December. And so far this winter, we've scraped about 7,600 egg masses. About 3,600 of those were actually on the first 3 parcels that we went to in Springfield. So it's just a really heavy population there. And then there was about 300 in Shrewsbury that we found. We had also treated in Shrewsbury, so we're hoping one of the reasons we didn't find so many were that we had treated. And then most of the rest were in Worcester. So now we're going to be moving into the live season. So we're out there installing what we call bug barrier traps in anticipation of hatch. And these are just sort of inverted sticky traps. And the foam batting just raises them above the level of the bark so that any insects crawling up or down the tree will crawl into that and then get stuck on the sticky material. It is almost time for hatch. They've already hatched in the southernmost portion of Connecticut where there's an infestation. And if you look on the PestCast map, Springfield is in the 1 to 50% hatch range. I was just out there on Monday. I didn't see anything there, but they look really close to hatching. And so for the rest of the season, the visual survey is just going to continue. We'll still be scraping egg masses as we find them. Until probably, mid to late June, just because there's sort of a rolling hatch where not everything hatches at once. It's over the course of a month or a little bit over a month. So we'll be out there scraping and also just trying to find the little first instars that are going to be hatching soon. And our next steps are just treatment. So we're looking into each infestation to decide where we're going to target treatments. We're also working with the USDA to put out sentinel trees, which are trees that have been either injected or with a basal bark spray treated with dinotefuran. And that's a systemic pesticide that just affects that one tree. But if we put them in Atlantis within a population, we're hoping that insects will be attracted to those trees, and then anything that feeds on the trees will die. So we can hopefully try to mitigate some of the population that way. And then we're just going to continue our visual survey. So we'll be out there looking for egg masses and nymphs for the next month or 2. And if anybody thinks that they see an SLF, please take a picture of it and then report to this website. You'll find a little report sheet there. And we welcome any and all reports, even if it doesn't turn out to be SLF. The public definitely helps us find these infestations. So it's really helpful when we get these. And that's all I have. So I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much. I am going to deploy the second poll question now. All right, which of these is the location of a confirmed spotted lanternfly infestation in Massachusetts? Your options are Stretchburg, Shutesbury, Shrewsbury, or Fetchburger. All right, let's see what folks are picking. I hope our former commissioner appreciates this question that I tailored especially for him. All right, we've got about 93% participation, so I'm going to leave this up for another 10 seconds or so. So we need to move on. We've got 95% participation. All right, and I'm going to close the poll at 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. I'm happy to report that the majority of folks answered correctly. The correct answer was Shrewsbury. None of these other towns are real town names. I just made them up for the purpose of today's poll. All right. I believe that it is time to move on to Elizabeth Barnes, our Forest Pest Outreach Coordinator. Elizabeth, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to really quickly go over some important spotted lanternfly information. So this is a spotted lanternfly life cycle. As you can see, they change quite a bit over the course of the year. At this time of year, as Astor mentioned, the ones in Massachusetts are probably still eggs, but the ones in some of the southern states are starting to hatch, and we expect to see hatch here shortly. So these are the two life stages I'm really going to focus on. The egg masses contain anywhere from 30 to 50 eggs, and they're about 1.5 inches long. They are covered in a grayish brown putty-like coating. We've got some examples of those here on the screen. As you can see in the first one, sometimes it has a little squiggle on the end, sometimes it's partially covered, sometimes they're totally uncovered. But unfortunately, even if they're uncovered, they're still viable. If they are uncovered, they look like little seeds all in a row, and you can actually occasionally find them in just like a row of single eggs. It's kind of weird. Those tend to be on the smaller, thinner stems. The first through third instar, so those are just the first through third life stages of this insect, are black with white spots on them. Sometimes people get them mixed up with ticks or spiders, but the biggest difference is spotted lanternfly tend to have a lot more of those little white spots on them than those other organisms. If you do see one though and you're not sure about it, please do take a picture and send it to us. So at this time of year, spotted lanternfly tend to feed on roses, both cultivated and invasive, perennials, as well as the new growth and saplings of things like grape tree of heaven and some of their other favorite species. Later on in the summer, they'll move to these larger trees, but these are the places where if you're checking for spotted lanternfly, you want to be looking right now. Now, what do you do if you see one? Well, please do report it. Snap a picture, note your location, get that picture before you do anything else. I know some people say you should stomp them if you see them, but if you stomp them, there's a chance of it escaping. So get that picture first, and then if you want to try and catch it or stomp it or anything like that, that's fine, as long as you're sure it's spotted lanternfly. If you're unsure if it's lanternfly or something else, please still send in a report. We are more than happy to get those reports as long as, you know, they're in good faith. It's better to be safe than sorry. The people who review them are, we're all bug people. You know I get excited when I get a picture of a moth and it turns out not to be a lanternfly. So feel free to send those in. And lastly, just as a reminder with invasive species in general, if you see something weird, if you see a lot of a bug you've never seen before, or all of a sudden a bunch of a specific type of plant are dying in this way you've never seen before, ask someone about it. Doesn't have to be us. It can be us though. Or it can be your friend who's a naturalist. It can be the person at the local park. Just get a picture of it and check in with someone, because that's how we catch a lot of invasive species that we don't even know are in the country yet. So you can report at the link on the screen at the bottom, or use the QR code on the side of the screen. And I'll also put all of the links I'm going to mention in the chat. If you are someone who works or lives in Massachusetts and you have a place where you could distribute spotted lanternfly materials, get in touch with us. We will send them to you for free. We have all sorts of fun stuff: mini posters, flyers, scraper cards, stickers. You can also download a lot of our guides and checklists off of our website. And if you want to design your own, also get in touch with us. We can share photos with you that you can use. We just ask that you give us credit. Now, we also have a newsletter. This is the best way to stay up to date about spotted lanternfly and all sorts of different forest pests. It comes out once a month. It's 5 bullet points or less with links out to further reading if you're interested. And it's all timely information. And Finally, we do have the webinars all archived. You can find them at the link up here. And we will be posting this webinar on that same YouTube channel when we're finished. It should be out in a few days. So if you really enjoyed it and you want to share it with someone else, that's the way to do it. Okay, and with that, we'll do our final quiz question.
Okay, give me 1 second here. Our final poll question. Now that you viewed today's webinar, estimate how much you know about spotted lanternfly. Do you still feel like an SLF newbie? Do you feel like you know a little bit about spotted lanternfly? Do you feel like you know some things about spotted lanternfly? Do you know a lot about spotted lanternfly, or are you a 100% certified SLF genius? Okay, we've got 78, 80. Wow, the answers are coming in very quickly. That's great. Got 91% participation. Gonna leave this open for another 10 seconds or so until the answers stop coming in. I think we are at about done in 3, 2, 1. Gonna end the poll. Of course, there's no right answer to these questions, but we see that most people say that they know either some or a lot about spotted lanternfly, and we even have 9 people that are certified SLF geniuses. And since the panelists can't participate in the polls, I think that's pretty good. Okay, are we back to Elizabeth?
Yeah, so that's the end of the presentations, and we will take some questions now. If you do have more questions that we run out of time and can't answer all of them, please, still stick them in the chat, or feel free to email them to us afterwards, and we'll do our best to get answers to them.